So we're done with querying from Java for now, and now we're going to move on to update and remove. So the API for update and remove in Java is pretty similar to the shell with some differences in the way parameters are passed. But before I show you update and remove, I want to just go over the document structure we'll be using for this lesson. So if you look at the top, I've abstracted some of the methods just to keep the code simple. So I have a method create collection here, which just creates a Mongo client, a database, and returns a collection, and then another method to print the contents of the collection. That's just keep the main method simple so you can see more easily. And then I create my documents by creating a list of names of strings and then inserting each of those names as the ID of a document in the collection. And then I print it. So let's run this. And you can see that indeed I have 5 documents in my collection: Alice, Bobby, Kathy, David, and Ethan. So let's look at update first. So update, like find, is a method on collection. So the method is update, and you can see it's overloaded. But we're going to use the simplest form first, which is the one that takes a query and an update operation. And you'll see later that there's a few more overloads for upsert and multi-update, but we won't deal with those yet. So let's update the first document in the collection, Alice, by creating a query for a document with an ID of Alice. And this is just a normal query, so all that we learned about querying using find applies to the update method. This can be any query, just like find. So that's the query. Now let's say what our update is. Now we're going to start with wholesale replacement, just like Richard did with the shell. And we'll say that we're going to update this document, and we'll set an age field to be, say, 24. And if we run this, we should see that Alice now has an age field that's 24, which is what we wanted. But since this is wholesale replacement, if we do a second update and say we change this to gender of female, then we would expect that the age field is going to disappear. And indeed it does. We have Alice ID, but gender female, and it disappears because while the first update set age to 24, it's a wholesale replacement of the document, including ID. You don't have to respecify ID, though usually you do. But when we do the second update, the document we're giving doesn't include age, so the age field disappears. We can change that by using the second behavior of update, by using the dollar operators for the second argument update instead of a basic DB object representing an entire document. So we can do that by saying basic DB object $set, where now we do a $set of gender to F. So in that case, we won't overwrite the age field. And now when we run it, we see that Alice has both an age field and a gender field. Okay, so that's the two basic behaviors of the update method on DB collection, using the default values of upsert, which is false, and multi, which is also false. So now let's look at upsert. So let's now try to update a document where the ID doesn't actually exist in the collection. So if I update Frank, we run this, we should not see Frank in the collection. We don't because we're not doing an upsert. The query ID Frank doesn't match any documents. But if we add the upsert parameter, true for the third parameter to update, which is upsert, then we should expect that a new document will be created for Frank. The ID is Frank, gender, I should change the gender to male, sorry Frank. We have a new document created for Frank because we did an upsert. Okay, so that's 3 of our 4 behaviors. Now let's look at the final one, which is multi. So let's say, like Richard did in his example, we want to update every document in the collection and add a title field of doctor. We can do that by switching the order of these parameters. Upsert false, multi is true. And now we should expect that every document in the collection will have a new field called title with the value doctor. And that is the case. Alice still has our age 24 because I didn't remove that. Okay, so that's all the behaviors of update. Now let's take a quick look at remove, and then we'll do a quiz. So if we want to remove documents in a collection, we can do that with the remove method. And there's a bunch of overloads. We'll get to that in a later lesson when we talk about write concern. But the remove method takes a single DB object that represents a query of which documents should be removed. If we just say new basic DB object, that matches everything, so all the documents will be removed. We can see they're all gone. But we can limit this with a query and say, let's only remove Alice. If we do that, then we should see that we now have 4 documents, Bobby, Kathy, David, Ethan, but Alice is gone. So what's a little confusing about update and remove is that while by default update only updates a single document, remove updates all the documents that match the criteria. And there's actually no way in the Java driver to tell it to only remove the first document. Okay, let's go to a quiz. So in this quiz you actually have to write some code. So do be careful and maybe try it in an editor first before you give an answer, just so you don't have any syntax errors. The question is, in the following code fragment, what is the Java expression in place of XXXX that will set the field examiner to the value Jones for the document with ID of 1, which we're already selected in the query? Please use the $set operator to do this. Don't worry about whitespace. The whitespace should be stripped, but do be careful about capitalization and other things. And since this is just an expression, you don't need a semicolon at the end, just the expression that you would put in place here.